Everybody, welcome to the DuCross Brothers Sports Warriors. I'm Tristen DuCross, and this on my side, as always, is my brother, my partner in crime, the one and only Shaun DuCross. We are trying a new look, a new setup again, so I hope you guys like it and enjoy it. Yeah, because everything is a little bit new, kind of like what happened over the weekend, right, Shaun?
Absolutely. Over the weekend was UFC 249. It was one of the rare ones. It was done in front of no crowd, but yet I kind of didn't mind it. And it was weird. I was talking on social media, and it was one of those things that I was like, I kind of don't mind it. I really got into it. It was one of those things that it was like, it was awkward at first. Like when you see Joe Rogan, you see John Anik, you see DC, and you see them standing together and they're violating the social distancing. And then all of a sudden, you look and they're on one side of the spectrum during this whole thing. And one thing I was talking to you about, as well as a couple buddies of mine, was it's weird that when you see John Anik and you see Joe Rogan, basically we're sitting at a booth like this. Joe Rogan on one side, John Anik on the other side. Probably maybe a little bit further than Tristen and I for John Anik and Joe Rogan. But DC was on the other side of the cage by himself. How did that make sense? I was so confused about why DC was on such an island by himself. And DC was like, cheering at one point, and John Adams was like, dude, I hear you all the way over here. And he's like, yeah, so okay, the guy's behind me.
See, even after the end, you and I had a couple conversations throughout the whole entire event about the social distancing and the situation. Because one of the issues, Shaun, that kind of popped up into our attention was the fact that at that time, you know, while we're looking at how the presentation is, and probably tonight's event, yes, there's an event tonight,
which we'll talk later on in the show about,
is that, again, Joe Rogan was not supposed to be in the cage doing interviews.
Correct. And he was in the cage doing interviews and shaking hands.
He was the only one that was so adamant, and what I thought at times, he was so uncomfortable at times, because it was like as if he knew he wasn't supposed to do it, but it was so second nature to him that he was like, you know what?
I'm all in.
I'm all in.
It is what it is. I'm moving forward. You're either going to be okay with this or you're going to be uncomfortable with this. And I mean, I give him props that he walked in and he was comfortable. Not many people would have been comfortable with that situation. I made the comment that, hey, so much for social distancing. What was interesting is that they keep the whole thing of social distancing at the end on the post fight.
Yeah.
That when it came out of the cage and they were still talking to the fighters, they had the one reporter in one area and then the fighters in the other area. So I'm not sure maybe if that was because Joe Rogan was comfortable and then the girl wasn't comfortable. Maybe that's where the disconnect was.
See, what was interesting about this whole entire fight card is because finally we got a fight card, right? We finally got one.
Yeah.
But then we were also kind of shown what the new world is going to look like, at least for a little while.
Yes.
I'm expecting tonight's showing to be a little bit better than what the first showing was.
No, I don't.
I'm not talking about the card.
Yeah.
I'm talking about how the interactions are going to be with the commentators. Because at times I thought the commentators were lost because, like you and I, we feed off of each other when we're close to each other.
Yes.
And when we started calling fights, we love to feed off each other's energy the way that we see it. Joe Rogan, DC, and Anik all do the same thing. Anik a little bit more so, where he is able to kind of do stuff by himself and get away with it.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, same thing. Daniel Cormier feeds off of those two.
And that's what I was seeing throughout the event was I was like, ooh, Daniel Cormier sounds a little bit uncomfortable at times. because it was a lot of the like, oh hey, let's see how this plays out. Let's see what goes on here, and it's a lot of like or expecting a reaction, and then when he doesn't get a reaction, it was kind of like, okay, how can I gauge what type of reaction I'm supposed to give solo? So that's what I got from DC. He did a good job on an island by himself, and I say on an island by himself because he was. So he did a great job, and the boys, John Anik, Joe Rogan, did a great job for what they were. There's a couple of quiet spots in there because the crowd wasn't there to take it all out. They weren't there really to conversate with each other. But all in all, the commentary side of it was pretty good. I like the fact that we were more invested in the fighters in this. Like, I will turn down the TV a lot of the time to keep it low key because I don't care for the commentators. I don't care to hear that. I want to analyze and break down what I see. I don't often like to hear the fans because I feel like sometimes the fans are just that of the fans. And they take away from the action and they don't often realize what the fighters are doing inside the cage. The nonsense booing. We're always advocating that don't boo the fighters. It's just a game plan. It's just a structure. So I like that aspect, that all I was like zoned in into the fighters and everything else like that. And then like it was just said in the chat. Yeah, DC was good because he was so loud that Francis Ngannou, no,
Greg Hardy.
Greg Hardy made the comment about, yeah, dude, he was like a third coach. Like, I heard everything he was saying. Like, if you don't do this, then you're going to get popped with this. So I like that aspect. And when we commentate, we bring that aspect into our commentary. It's like, dude, do you hear that corner? That corner is saying this. They're doing this.
Yeah, because when there's nobody out there and there's nobody kind of, it becomes so kind of like, I'm trying to figure out the right word. Without fans there, it's kind of like a dark kind of mute thing going on. Yes, there's fights going on inside the cage. Yes, you can hear certain things going on, but as a fan, you're expecting that excitement, right? You're expecting that that's what you're expecting to hear across the television. So as commentators, you have to now be able to bring the audience in from the TV into the cage, inside the side, into the octagon, so they could feel part of the show.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what I thought we got from the UFC 249. And I applaud what the commentators did because they've never done anything like this before. So I applaud them for doing it. When you have a product like this, you have to go outside of your comfort zone. They did exactly that. I applaud them for that.
Absolutely.
Fans, I applaud you guys for tuning in tenfold. I applaud you for that. Because it means the world to the fighters as well as the company. Yes, I'm actually saying that. Prelims did 1.15 on ESPN. Congratulations. Killed it. Record setting. From all accounts, the pay-per-view, they freaking tore the roof down. Good job.
Yeah, according to the Sports Business Bureau Journal, whatever, Sports Business Journal, released the numbers, and they were north of 700,000. North. And mind you, let's reflect on that, okay? The fact that you look at Justin Gaethje headlining. You look at the fact that he was headlining with Tony Ferguson. You look at the fact that it was Henry Cejudo and Dominic Cruz. And there was a trickle. Okay? Most of those guys have not headlined a bout by themselves. Most of those guys have not headlined. But they drew a record-breaking for UFC in what was described as an era of not going to happen. Well, it did. And Dana White says that maybe this is the new future. If they could do $700,000 buys and maybe get a revenue cut from the ESPN Plus a little bit more than what they're doing now, it may entice them to go this avenue.
For the time being, absolutely.
There's rumblings that they lost maybe $5.5 million in gate money. So while it was a little they still did enough that warrants that it's not a bad decision to put on a fight card during COVID. It's an interesting debate, especially going forward, about what the future entails for all sports. Now, you look at the UFC and you look at combat, you look at boxing and stuff like that, you could probably see this in boxing, combat, Muay Thai, any type of event like that where fans aren't necessarily a need. And it was interesting because I didn't think that it was possible. But here I'm reflecting on it, and the only thing I see that's not possible is to put forward an event like baseball, football, hockey. Because how can you put on a sport that is essentially 3 hours long where you need fan excitement, fan interaction? You don't need fan interaction for somebody punching another dude in the face.
Facts.
You need some enticement to watch baseball.
Especially if you're going to sit there for hours on hours and hours.
It's just the same way with wrestling. You have to be enticing the fan to watch wrestling. I somewhat have a hard time watching wrestling right now with the WWE with no fans or no employees around, because I can't stand the every 2 seconds of fighters knowing that you're not generally hitting a wrestler.
I get that.
But when you go to AEW right now, the staging of the wrestlers around brings that crowd environment, so you don't often hear that.
Although they should not have gone back to Daly's place in Jacksonville. Just saying. That is a big arena, and it looked horrible with the spread out fans on live television. Don't do it again. Don't do it. It's unless you can pack in at least 15 to 20 people and somehow cut out all the emptiness in the back, then I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with the no crowd in certain situations. Just not. But then you get to the card. Get to the fight card, Sean. You have a new champion. And the new champion is officially none other than Justin Gaethje.
And we've been so high on Justin Gaethje for years, since World Series of Fighting, and kept telling people, don't sleep on this kid.
Right?
Yeah, his demeanor, his fight style was reckless and ruthless. But when you become a fighter, you end up evolving. And anybody that's watched our show for over the decade that we've been doing it, is that in order to be successful, you can't be afraid to evolve. And Justin Gaethje did just that. He evolved as a fighter. He realized that
going in there reckless ain't going to get the job done.
With some of the best fighters in mixed martial arts being in the UFC, you can't go in there with that same style that you did against Luis Palomino. That made you infamously famous among the MMA community.
100%, because it reminded you of the Mickey Ward and the Arturo Gatti fights. You looking at those two. It's funny. It was brought up. It was brought up too. Is that Sam Alvey interacting with no crowd? Absolutely. What about Buffer? I think that might have been a slip of the tongue. I don't think he was playing with the crowd, but to the thousands in attendance, the main event of the bro. There's
Nobody there.
nobody in the audience. Nobody. But I mean, he's been doing this for how long, Sean? So
Yeah.
I'll give him a pass on that because, dude, you've been doing this for a long time. I just thought it was absolutely hilarious when he said it.
It was
To the
priceless.
thousands in attendance, I was like, bro, there ain't nobody there. There's no need to say that. But was it just me, or was watching Tony Ferguson versus the Justin Gaethje fight? Is that Justin Gaethje was not fooled by any of the hijinks that Tony Ferguson was putting out there. You know, where he gets quirky or unorthodox, switching stances, showboating. Justin Gaethje was just like, bro, I'm here to fight. You can do all that. Just know I'm going to punch you in the face.
Right.
And boy, Justin Gaethje did that over and over and over again until ultimately it was like as if he was going to break the will of Tony Ferguson. Instead, he broke his orbital bone.
And among other things. His spirit. Even though if you watch the video that was on
He was having
social
fun?
media, he was having fun, he was dancing, he was enjoying his moment.
But Tony Ferguson got paid $500,000.
Yeah. See, I'm so
Highest payout on the UFC cards goes to Tony Ferguson. I'm trying to figure out how. I know the buy rates are through the roof, and I know that multiple people are going to.
well. The reason
Are
why
going to
was-
get it, I
was-
get it.
The reason why, because he came in as a champ, and he put on Fight of the Night. That's why he got paid more. That's a no-brainer. But the outcome of the fight was so hard to stomach. It was one of those things that it took you back to the Stefan Bonner and Forrest Griffin bout. It took you back to the fight of Robbie Lawler and what's his name? Roy McDonald. It was hard to stomach to watch for 5 rounds. 5 rounds. 5 rounds of pure, ruthless punishment of another fighter.
Right. And so now, after this fight, Sean, we get questions about the mindset about Tony Ferguson, right? Because we've seen fighters, you go to war, you go to battle, you leave it all inside the cage, you say you're going to die inside the cage. Are you prepared to die inside the cage? I honestly believe that at times Justin Gaethje, it means exactly that. Tony Ferguson, he's a different breed. He's a different animal. Mentally, psychology, like mindset, totally different beast compared to everybody else. Tony Ferguson, to be in the war and in the battle that he was, this one was far different than Pettis. This was far different than the other fights. We've seen fights like this take years off of fighters. This fight will be no different for Tony. Even though Tony Ferguson is quick to say, hey, I'm good. I'll be right back there next time. I believe he'll be there next time. Not necessarily sure about his mindset being there next time. I think he has to look at himself again. You have to learn how to evolve. I don't know if I solely put this on the coaches with him or himself, but I don't necessarily know what his game plan was coming into this fight.
No, his game plan was the same game plan that it's always been.
I'm going to do a bunch of hijinks inside the cage. Unorthodox. You're going to fall for it, and I'm going to hit you.
Yeah, it sounds almost about right. But
That's a lot like
but here's
the
where
Dominic Cruz fight.
But here's where the disconnect was in that fight, Tristan. Okay? As soon as Tony Ferguson got hit with one of many right hands from Justin Gaethje, that thought process of I'm going to be unorthodox, I'm going to be awkward, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to do that, went right out the door. When he went down and like swiped as if he went Bloodsport on Justin Gaethje, wiped the floor and threw sand in the eyes of Justin Gaethje, That's what I knew Justin Gaethje had Tony Ferguson. Because to me, that showed how mentally broken he became in that fight. Because of the fact that he went to hijinks that to me didn't come off as Tony Ferguson-ish. It came off as, uh-oh, I'm hurt.
I'm in a fight.
And
this is a little bit different.
Exactly. That's the way I saw that fight.
So with this fight being done, we got our new champion, right?
Yes.
We have Justin Gaethje versus Khabib, almost 100%. Fight Island, June, the summer. June.
I'm here in July now.
It's going down in the summer. I think this is a bad matchup stylistically again for Khabib. And I say that because if he did not hug Conor McGregor and that fight was there to stand, Conor would have beat him. It's a known fact. Say what you want, believe what you want. I honestly believe that fight would have been a lot different if it was standing up.
But it's not going to stand up when you have a world-class wrestler.
Right. Because he doesn't like to get hit.
Even though if you ask...
Gaethje can wrestle. Nobody knows Gaethje can wrestle.
Yeah,
Gaethje has defense, but yet nobody knows about that because this guy's like, dude, I'm just going to take your head off. I'm going to make you respect my power, and I'm going to destroy you minute by minute, second by second. That's what he's going to do. That's Justin Gaethje. Coming into that, he's going to show exactly that, hey, I don't have some washed-up defense. And I just don't like this matchup for Khabib. I don't. Conor nipping at the heels, too.
I feel bad for anybody in the lightweight division, Tristan, that has to go toe-to-toe with Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, buddy.
If Justin Gaethje is now evolving as a fighter and go 5 rounds of dropping bombs and still able to go, there's not many people that are going to be able to withstand that punishment. One thing, too, not to take away from Tony Ferguson. El Kukui, I was saying this during the fight. He's the boogeyman.
He looked like the boogeyman after that fight.
My God. The boogeyman.
But should we call the boogeyman Keith Peterson?
Okay, here's my issue with that. We're not talking about Henry Cejudo and Dominic Cruz.
No, we're talking about a referee.
We're talking about Dominic Cruz versus Keith Peterson.
Not the fight.
This is very childish and immature on both parties. Not just X, Y, and Z. For Dominic Cruz to state that Keith Peterson smelt of cigarettes and alcohol is disrespectful on multiple levels.
Okay, hold up. So a couple fighters that have fought with Keith Peterson as a ref, this is what they have said. Yes, 100% he smells like cigarettes. They have never smelled alcohol on his breath. But cigarettes, yes. All the time. And quote, he smokes like a chimney. Sometimes he smokes before he goes out into the cage. So he smokes cigarettes. Our folk, Sean, has smoked cigarettes for a very long time. We know what that smells like.
Yes.
We can walk into certain rooms and we'll be like, oh, we know you smoked. Because that stitch lingers. It does. On your clothes, on your breath, it's there. So I believe that certain fighters that, I'm not going to say names, but they have said Keith Peterson does smell like cigarettes, 100%. Another issue that came up was that Dominic Cruz said that he looked in the eyes of Keith Peterson, looked in his eyes, and he is super quiet. Dean talks a lot. Big John McCarthy talks a lot inside that cage. He would rather have had, if he had known this, that he would have taken Dean or Big John McCarthy. Again, other fighters have said that Keith Peterson is a known, quiet referee inside the octagon. He does not talk much. Some fighters like it, some fighters don't. Dom did not like that. So again, do not forget that when you're inside the cage, you are the man in control. So while being quiet, being inside that cage, understand that you have two fighters that are putting it all out on the line, that you have to understand you are the controller of the cage. Just that. Herb Dean has come out and said that he's a professional referee. He has never done anything like that in his life. But Dominic Cruz is still going on media platforms and slandering his name. Do you not understand the ramifications of that could be? That is a fireable offense, is it not? They now have to investigate Keith Peterson because of accusations of this. Man, that is not right by any stretch of imagination. If this is not true, Don, what do you get out of this, bro?
Exactly.
You lost. Be humble in defeat.
And I get why Peterson is going to social media and taking shots at Dominic Cruz because, I mean, you're ruining his reputation. You're ruining the chance of potentially him ever reffing again inside of a cage. It's not fair. It's not right. Dominic Cruz said that if he almost didn't walk into that cage, well, then why did he? He wasn't obligated to. If he felt that disrespectful, that he was on something for your safety as a fighter, why would you step in that cage? There's nothing in this world that would have said, you know what? I feel comfortable stepping in that cage. I would have went over to see. I would have went over to the commission and said, I'm not comfortable with it.
If it was that bad,
the commission's there.
Right.
The commission's around the cage. There's other referees around the cage. They could have made the
absolutely.
adjustment.
You could have said, hey, postpone this fight. I don't want this ref. Check him out right now. There were so many different ways that you could have done something to prevent this if you were 100% in what you were saying. But no, you waited till after the fight, then take it to another level by slandering another man's name. Man, there better be concrete facts behind this or else something's going to go sideways. Real quick.
Absolutely, and that's not something that you want to test that boundaries with.
But what went sideways was Francis Ngannou's opponent. Dude.
Yeah, it was just said that we almost witnessed the murder, and I was like, wait a second,
I'm going to butcher his name, so I apologize in advance. But Rozodnik, I'm going to go with that. Dude, they were literally just swinging from hellfire and brimstone. left, right, over, swinging with vengeance.
Reckless abandonment.
That was crazy. And then one magically lefts on the chin and he is just starched. Right up against Doug Cage. Right up against the cage. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and Tristan mentioned that apparently Dominic Cruz is not the only one that has mentioned any type of things about Keith Peterson. But I think there's a time and a place to hold Keith Peterson accountable for his actions. And I think that if it was really of a big issue as Dom is making it out to be,
there has to be other people involved.
There was legitimately stuff he could have probably done before he walked in that cage. I'm just saying.
Yes.
He asked, and I'm surprised nobody had an answer for Dominic, because I'm 99.9% sure he could have asked the commission right there, like, hey, I don't feel comfortable.
Right.
And then there would have been something done with it. Ngannou's knockout wasn't one of the best I've seen him do, but he's a scary heavyweight for what the outcome is, and he's frustrated and annoyed because they're just thinking about, like, you'll get DC if DC versus DFBA doesn't happen. I don't know if he deserves a title shot yet. I think he may have to get one more bout. But an interim title shot does sound a little bit intriguing versus Daniel Cormier. It looks like an eerie similar of like Daniel Cormier versus Anthony Rumble Johnson. I'd be interested to see how that fight goes. So it's interesting. I would like to touch on Henry Cejudo, but we got to go to a break. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit on our way out. But there is so much things we can talk about with UFC 249 that it could be the whole show if we wanted to.
All day.
But you got to.
We could have made this a UFC show all day because you had UFC 249, UFC Fight Night tonight, UFC Fight Night Saturday. Folks, we got pronounced Rosenstruck. Okay, Rosenstruck. Well, he got starched and it looked like something out of the video game from EA Sports, Fight Night. Just keep hitting left hook, left hook, left hook until you knock somebody out.